This first video covers how to use the status board part of the Meditech electronic medical record. It is one of 7 videos showing you how to navigate through and document in the electronic medical record. Once you log on to Meditech, you'll see your application menu, Nurse Patient Care System. Clicking on that or right arrowing will bring up your menu. You will want to go to the status board, which is your patient list as you're doing patient care. So you click on status board. Once you get to the status board screen, you'll see a message that says no records to display. You need to add your patients at this point. So we're going to add one and then another to reinforce the step. To do this, we're going to come down to the button at the bottom that says Find Patient. And our patient's last name is Tester, first name, comma, Bill. And then we click OK. We now get a list of 4 patients with that name. And the one I want is the one that's 2.5 years old. So I click on that. That then brings up the admissions or visits. He's only had 1. He is currently admitted because there's a green dot. We can tell that. So we're going to click to turn that green. We're going to come down to the bottom and click Add to My List. And then My List. You now have Phil on the status board, and you can see that because he's highlighted, his name is up here. We're going to add one more patient just so you have a couple of patients to look at. So again, we're going to go to Find Patient. This patient's last name is EDIP, and I'm going to say OK. There's just one patient. Let's click on it. Here's our current admission, so I'm going to click on it to turn it green. I'm going to click on Add to My List and My List. I now have EDIP on as well as Tester. To change between the two, so we're going to talk about Tester first. I'm going to click on Tester in the first column, and you'll see that the banner at the top changed. Before we get into the status board itself, I want to give you a little geography about Meditech. Wherever you are, the patient that you have open will always be up here at the top. So if you're not finding something or something looks weird, first look up here. You might be inadvertently in EDIP train rather than in Tester. So up here at the top we see the patient's name, date of birth, age, gender, height, weight information if that has been recorded in the system and saved. Any allergies. Over on the other side of the banner, we see 2 numbers, a number that starts with H and one that starts with M. M is the medical record number. That is your identifier that does not change between visits. That's what you're going to use to check you have the right patient. The H number is a visit number. Every time Phil comes in for lab, imaging, and admission, and ER visit, he'll get a new H number, which is for hospital visit. You then see the unit he's in, the room, and then he has an actual admit in. Below this area, if you have a patient who is a partial code or a do not resuscitate, you will see that there. Now, the other thing you might have noticed as we whip through this is a couple of blue circles. The blue circle with the white eye in Meditech means there's information there, so we're going to click on that blue circle, and you will see further information about your patient. Key ones to point out: patient being confidential, you cannot even acknowledge the patient is here to anyone. You'll see if they have drug-resistant organisms, the last Pew score, high risk for anesthesia, if the patient is on George Pass, which is a child on the autism spectrum. To get out of that view, we're going to hit the close button. You also see a blue circle with a white A in it next to allergies. For this, I want us to change our view from Phil to Train EDIP, and you see there's a penicillin allergy. When we click on the allergy information, you see the information about it, that it's severe, and then a pharmacist or physician hasn't verified it yet. To get back out of this view, we hit Return. Let's re-highlight Phil. Going around the screen a little bit more, the list on the right-hand side are all places to possibly go to when taking care of your patient. And we'll talk about those in further videos. Down here at the bottom, you'll find 4 buttons. The question mark button is a help button with a lookup for questions you might have about Meditech. Let's go over to the far right, and that is the refresh button. Meditech refreshes every 2 to 3 minutes. You'll see your screen flash. If you've done something and you're not seeing evidence of it, you can click on the refresh button and you may begin to see it. The padlock is a way to suspend screen, which we do not use because we have another way to do that out in the units, and your instructor will tell you about that. And that leaves us with the world button. Click on the world button. This is a reference or shortcut to various things you might need when caring for your patient. Just going to point out a couple. If you come on down, you'll see Lexicomp. That will take you directly to the formulary, information about medications, and medication teaching materials. If you come on down, you'll see other patient family education materials. You will see the policy and procedure search if you want to look something up. And the final one is up to date, which is a subscription that you can search conditions or treatments and the most up-to-date information. Cancel to get out of this screen. Okay, across the bottom are more buttons we'll deal with in a moment. So let's talk about the status board itself. Meditech is primarily built on spreadsheets. So you will see columns, you'll see rows, and then each box is a cell, just like on an Excel spreadsheet. So the first column, pretty straightforward. Here's our patient's name, age, gender, the room he's in. You then see an admitting diagnosis. You see a physician, and when you see 3 dots, that tells you there's more information. So if I click on that box, I see that we also have a couple of other people involved in Phil's care. We're going to go ahead and close that. The next 2 columns are next scheduled interventions and medications. We don't generally use those because, as you'll note, PRNs aren't shown. And we generally get the interventions off of the intervention list, which we'll talk about in another video. And we get the next scheduled meds off of the EMAR, which is the medication sheet. You'll notice some things are red. In Meditech, when it's a timed item, if the time is 1 minute past the due time, it will turn red. The other times you may see red is if something's stat or a critical lab value. Moving on to the next column, you will see diet. And if there's more than one diet, you will see a blue plus. And if you click on that, you can see quite a number of diets on this patient. That would normally not be the case, but this is a test patient. I'm going to close out of that. You will see an orders cell. Orders would show here. You may see in there AC, meaning there's orders to acknowledge that the bedside nurse will need to do. You may see new, which means there are new orders someone else has acknowledged. You can click on it and view those orders. You may see stat, meaning there's a stat order, and that would be red. And the fourth thing you would see in that box is UNC or UNC, meaning there is a microbiology specimen, urine, stool, sputum, that needs to be collected. If that happens for you, your instructor can explain the process. And if your patient has a blood order to give or it's already in progress in transfusion box, you will see ready if the blood's ready for pickup in lab, issued if the blood has left lab and is on its way to be given. Once the blood is started, it will say trans and a time for the next vital signs that are due. Once it's stopped by the nurse giving the blood, it will say post-trans and the time for the last vital sign. The next column, isolation, will show if the patient's in isolation, and if you look up under train EDIP, you see that they're in contact. Any alerts, that might be one-on-one, sitter, suicide, custody, those kinds of things. And the last box is results. There are lab results back. It will note it there, and you can click on it, and it will take you to the results in the system. The next column, the last documented Pew score, will be in there. Again, Train has them, Phil doesn't. There was a refresh. If the patient has a drug-resistant organism, it will say a Y and what the name of the organism is in that box. In the next column, the main one that you would need to know about is bloodless medicine and surgery program. If there's a Y in there, the patient has been enrolled in that and should have a no blood armband on. The next column is who the primary caregivers are for that patient. You'll notice when you click on the primary caregivers, you will see that's, in this case, mom and dad or whoever can be in the room 24/7 and their phone number. The next, alternate caregivers, those are people that can be in the room when parents are not present. In this case, it's Grandma Clara. Grandma Clara, however, can't get patient information. That still goes to the primary caregivers. And then if there's any miscellaneous visiting information, they're staying at Ronald McDonald House, they're staying at a family in Fresno, even though they're from Bakersfield. This is just sort of a humorous one, but there's someone who can't visit unless father is present. Then moving on over, you will see the admission date. Risk or abuse factors are things that have been identified and charted. Anything from parents' voice concern to CPS to multiple things you might see there. Special handling devices. This is where you put the safe patient handling information. For instance, air hover devices that need to use a hover mat versus a slide sheet versus a lift. And then the language is the language the baby speaks. In this column, the only one that you would probably need to be aware of is a temporary location. If it says CHLF in there, the patient is in the child life playroom or schoolroom. At the end of each shift, you're here for a clinical, you need to remove your patients from the status board so that when you come back for clinical the next time, you'll be able to add your assigned patient at that point. It's very simple to do this. The way that you do it is you make a check mark on the left next to each of our patients that were added to the list today to care for them, and you come down here to the bottom and you click on remove from list. You get a message that says we took them off. You say okay, and you're back to the no records to display, which is what you started with at the beginning of your shift. It concludes the introduction to the status board.